Hello again, Om. Do the females in the Vedas represent true historical figures? Swamini Atma Pragnananda says in an article titled Gender Equality in the Vedic Period, throughout the ages, rishis have been highly revered. Persons in the Rig Veda who had intuitive and special experiences are called rishis. The Vedic mantras are the records of the spiritual realizations and experiences of the rishis, who had revelations or hearings. They are called seers, mantra drastaraha, because they literally see the actions of the cosmic powers. A rishi is a person, man or woman, of contemplation. She was perhaps not necessarily a scholar or an intellectual that had access to intuition, inspiration, and other superior modes of knowledge. Women of the Vedic period, around 4500 to 2500 BCE, were epitomes of spiritual attainments. The Vedas have volumes to say about these women. The gender discrimination is a later phenomenon. Gradually, a general opinion was formed that women are not adhikaris for the study of the Vedas. Such an injunction is not available in the Vedas. Many non-Vedic as well as Vedic scholars may not know that there are at least 27 women mantra drastaraha in the Rig Veda. Being able to see a mantra has nothing to do with somebody's gender. In another article, Women Scholars in Ancient India, it is stated of female sages who dedicated their lives to the pursuit of knowledge and the study of the Vedas. Some women were unmarried, living as ascetics and independent of their fathers, brothers, or male counterparts. They were paragons of intellectual proficiency, natural philosophy, and spiritual enlightenment. They were rishikas, female sages in their own right, and were revered as teachers, doctors, and theorists. The sacred thread ceremony, called Upanayana, was conferred on both girls and boys of all castes at the age of 7. Post this ceremony, children were admitted to Vedic educational institutions, also known as gurukulas. Many of these gurukulas practice co-education. However, with the advent of women teachers, there were also an increasing number of educational institutions dedicated to girls pursuing higher education. Finally, Swami Vivekananda, during his famous speech at the First Parliament of the World Religions in 1893 in Chicago, emphasizes the existence of female rishis in the Vedas. He says, "The Hindus have received their religion through revelation, the Vedas. They hold that the Vedas are without beginning and without end. It may sound ludicrous to this audience how a book can be without beginning or end. But by the Vedas, no books are meant. They mean the accumulated treasury of spiritual laws discovered by different persons in different times. Just as the law of gravitation existed before its discovery and would exist if all humanity forgot it, so it is with the laws that govern the spiritual world. The moral, ethical, and spiritual relations between soul and between individual spirits and the Father of all spirits were there before their discovery and would remain even if we forgot them. The discoverers of these laws are called rishis, and we honor them as perfected beings. I'm glad to tell this audience that some of the very greatest of them were women. Many scholars within the Vedic tradition convey the position that the feminine presence in the Vedic texts reflect both real historical females as well as a profound expression of feminine power, the way Vak is honored in the sacred literature. Yet, other scholars, often outside the tradition, deny these women actually existed in history. Instead, they argue that the presence of female rishis in the Vedic canon is simply a linguistic and poetic creative fiction that in at least some cases actually further enables Brahmanical patriarchy. The Western Anglophone English-speaking scholar Michael Witzel argues that most likely almost all 27 Rishikas of the Vedas are fictitious. He says, "It is a traditional and common misconception that a considerable number of Rigvedic hymns were composed by women. This amounts to some 20-some female figures that have been regarded as Rigvedic rishis ever since the index to the Rigveda, the late Vedic Sarvanukramani, was composed, supposedly by Katyayana. The tradition regarding Rigveda authors has been very strong," he says. "It is a custom even today to mention the author, meter, and deities even before starting to recite a Rigvedic hymn. However, we have to distinguish the traditional authors of the hymns from those actually preserved in the body of the text. The two set frequently do not overlap. Though female authors and interlocutors are, prima facie at least, not entirely absent from the Vedas, the role of literate women in the Rig Veda will have to be reevaluated. We have to distinguish, of course, between mere interlocutors in the hymns from actual authors. The women speaking such verses have habitually been made authors of these stanzas by the Anukramani." Michael Witzel continues, "This leaves finally a few women that might stand the greatest chance of having even Rigvedic authors. He specifically argues that in regard to the prominent figures such as Gargi and Maitreyi, their role is usually overstated. As I have stressed elsewhere, it should be noted that women, just like Kshatriyas and kings, or even the son of God, Bhrigu, are inserted into such dialogues at critical points, or when a special new proposition has to be as to draw attention to its unusual character. I recall my dissertation advisor bringing up Michael Witzel and this unresolved issue at the dawn of initiating my dissertation topic. Immediately, I thought it is similar to how sometimes it is also contested that Diotima, of Plato's Symposium of the West, is a historical figure. In her book Rishikas in the Rig Veda, Swamini Atmapragnananda states, "Some contend that many of the listed Rishikas are concepts without a face or form. Fine, even if there is one Kalpana Chawla or Sunita Williams among the multitude of women, this statement is made. What is instantiated here is there only needs to be one historical female Rishika in the Vedas to argue conclusively that verification to be an Adhikari, qualified student of the Vedas, is not contingent on inhabiting a male body. That is, women are not unequivocally excluded from the study or teaching of the Vedas. The question also remains, how much does it actually matter as far as the deeper meaning of the indisputable feminine presence in the Vedas? Whether fictions or historical figures, it is apparent that female rishis helped elucidate the visions propagated in the Vedic texts. Female interlocutors such as Gargi and Maitreyi are glorified as participating in the evolution of Vedic teaching traditions. This is despite that their historical presence is sometimes questioned, and, as shared by even Swamini Atmapragnananda, whether Maitreyi gained genuine understanding of supreme truth through her husband is unclear. Furthermore, without a doubt, Vak, as a premier goddess, grants the Vedas with a complete feminine overlay, that without the Vedas simply cannot exist. Deeper meaning of the authority of females in the Vedas. What I ultimately discovered is there are a variety of ways to understand the female voices instantiated in the Vedas and later expressed through the diverse Indic religious traditions. One is to recognize historical female authority in the index text as indicative of female empowerment in the ancient Vedic times, representing an example of which we can draw upon today. A second way is to suggest that the female voices in the Vedas do not represent actual female figures, but yet act as a sort of ventriloquist or puppet for male voices. conveying a story of women in the Vedas that privileges the female voice archetypically, yet also uses them to further a Brahmanical patriarchal structure. Yet, there is a third position, put forth by Anwe Mukhopadhyay in a more recent book titled The Authority of Female Speech in Indian Goddess Traditions, Devi and Women-Splaining. In this provocative text, Mukhopadhyay argues that the female characters in the Vedas not only express female empowerment, even if often metaphorically, but also reflects a recognition by males that they are incomplete without embodying and expressing feminine qualities. He eloquently suggests that female authoritative speech in the Vedas offers a provocative way to reimagine gender through dialogue in Indic texts. The union of feminine and masculine energies is a part of the rich cosmic cultural landscape of India and offers a refreshing perspective on notions of gender. I recently heard Indian marriages are often blessed by an individual of the third gender, recognizing the sacred quality of a union between the feminine and masculine. Thus, perhaps the presence of female authority in the ancient Indic literature is another step in leveling up gender norms altogether. The pedagogy of love and friendliness. Mukhopadhyay quotes scholar Neil Stevens to say, "Women-splaining is not a reversal of mansplaining, where women dismiss a man's value or speech, but rather expresses a sharing of wisdom with friendliness and love." He insists that it is not as important to verify the historical existence of women to correspond to textual female voices, but more important to ask the question, what does the female authority in the Vedas mean for us today? Whether the female Rishikas of the Rig Vedas are creative fictions or historical figures, the female authority in Indic texts offer an approach to transmitting supreme truth that is compelling. The female sages introduce rigorous questioning and unabashedly share personal experience in the teaching process, removing doubts and arguing positions, all the while reflecting a tone of love and friendliness. What is extraordinary is that this same unique pedagogy is enlivened by female gurus of our time, whose existence cannot be denied. One female teacher of Advaita Vedānta of Puja Swamiji Sampradaya that I interviewed stated, "A young German man told me that receiving teachings from all males using only logic and analysis regarding the single reality lacks something, the human element. I wanted to listen to Vedanta from a female to receive a more comprehensive vision, which also focuses on human growth and attitudes and day-to-day living. This changes the way I deal with decisions and emotional life." The single most common quality of the female contemporary teachers of Advaita Vedānta I have researched is their ability to teach this vision of supreme truth in a way that's not away from our everyday lives as multi-layered human beings, live through the different containers of existence, including body, mind, and sense organs. Yet, immersed in a tone of love and connection, their teachings always aim to transmit the supreme vision of non-duality, where the equation self equals consciousness, Atman equals Brahman, is our highest truth. What is important and powerful about this ancient feminine pedagogy, is that it transmits teachings with a flair of love and friendliness, and that love is considered the very essence of self. Carol Whitfield, affectionately known as Radhaji in Puja Swamiji's Sampradaya, gives an almost soliloquy-like expression on discovering love through self-knowledge in her book titled The Jungian Myth and Advaita Vedānta. She states, "The experiential discovery of love as the nature of one's innermost being, the Vedantic self, completes the individuated process. A human being's sense of completion lies in his or her ultimate union with love, being loved, and loving. Scriptures around the world acknowledge love as the cornerstone of one's well-being, saintliness, or liberation. And saints of all religions speak of love as union with God. It is the finding of the lost treasure, that element whose acquisition completes the human quest. Radhaji, whose spiritual name denotes the cosmic lover of Krishna, an avatar of supreme truth, eloquently reveals the connection between genuine feelings of love, self-healing, and liberation. The pedagogy initiated through the voice of Gargi even expresses herself through contemporary female teachers, Brahmavādinis, of our time. Let us now revisit the topic of happiness through the lens of another female Brahmavādini, Acharya Shunya, who is the first female Acharya of her grandfather's lineage, dating back to the ancient times of the Rig Veda. In her book titled Sovereign Self, in a section titled Happiness is a State of Mind, Acharya Shunya states, "We are happy with our new phone relationship when it functions to our liking. If it does not, we become unhappy and want to be free of the offending object, be it a phone or a person. Your happiness and unhappiness are only mental states. Happiness does not lie in the object itself. If it did, we would never want to get rid of any object. Joy, therefore, comes from recognition that I, the self, am an independent, happiness-engendering entity, and not dependent on any object I interact with, living or non-living, for my security or pleasure. Maybe you wrongly entrusted your happiness to external objects or assigned them greater value than they ever deserved. Happiness is something you must claim inside you as your own." And finally, she says, "And here is the best part. When there is no emotional dependence, there is no fear of losing the object. People, for example, can no longer manipulate you to put up with disrespect just because you fear losing them. The more you operate from your inherent wholeness, the more fearless you become. Yes, being prepared to lose anything, but not yourself, is the ultimate inner strength and best preparation for human relationships." Acharya Shunya's teaching regarding happiness speaks to the feminine side of relational loss that often involves emotional dependence and accepting disrespect from others. With a mother-like invitation, Acharya Shunya invites women and men alike to step into their power, to reclaim their freedom, which is their birthright. She says, "Unfortunately, we often betray and abandon ourselves, again due to Maya. We are subconsciously searching for the real deal, self, but we keep ending up with the shadow, jiva. No wonder we keep criticizing ourselves, disliking ourselves, and even scolding ourselves without really knowing how to reclaim our inner fullness. True self-acceptance lies in realizing the fact that we must stop trying to fix ourselves. After some time and reasonable effort, we simply must see through it. Perhaps it is time to stop criticizing the clingy, attached, fearful, and dependent jiva that lives inside Maya's sandcastles. Instead," she says, "it is time to be free and to act from that freedom because you have been the self all along. Who you think you are will determine how you act." Story and myth, real meaning of the feminine presence in the Vedas. A notable biologist in the United States often employs the phrase empirically false and metaphorically true to instantiate the value of moral truth and vision that underlies myths and narratives from time memorial. It is crucial to understand the way our inquiry into the historical past is in some ways superficial. What is more valuable is to understand the meaning we give to narratives on a metaphorical scale, which reaches women and men alike. Perhaps men are hard-pressed to listen to actual women, but in a deep interface with their lack in certain aptitudes, they create females to listen to. Imagine the depth of this revelation. What I love about Mukhopadhyay is an invitation to reach beyond the historical empirical truth to the truth of story and its complex, multi-layered meanings. More and more, Western public philosophers are following the ancient teaching traditions of India by leaning on story and narrative to instantiate valid pathways to moral purpose. We recognize more than ever that all wisdom traditions and religions are built upon centuries of interpretations that provide overlays to our sacred texts. For instance, Jordan Peterson, a famous intellectual of the West, says, "The Bible is a text upon which other texts depend." This essentially means that Scripture occupies a special place in displaying, setting, and perpetuating truth. It isn't that the Bible is true, it's that the Bible is the precondition for the manifestation of truth, which makes it way more true than just true, Peterson continues. It's a whole different kind of true. The authority of female rishikas in the Vedas operate in a similar way. What is at stake is the liberation and removal of the timeless ignorance, maya, of humanity. The Shakti revealed in the sacred Om, revealed in every word and meter, and revealed in female character, is necessary for the highest mystical teaching to take place. This is factual. We do not need 100% proof evidence of a historical female rishi in the same way Christianity does not sustain itself on a mono-narrative of the historical story of Jesus that is also contested in various ways. Without the female presence in the Vedas as the feminine aspect, Shakti, of every meter and word, as the female characters presented who support and teach supreme truth, what is left? My daughter has this magnificent LED light. When you plug it in, a beautiful array of different colors appear on her ceiling. Every night she can have a personal light show. Yet, the light is powered by electricity, that without, there is no light show. Similarly, the universe and all name and form is powered by Shakti, without which our galaxy, a most beautiful school for liberation, does not exist. All that is, including the Vedas, the Sampradayas, and self-knowledge itself, are powered by this feminine force. So I want to ask you, what else is needed to verify a woman's capacity and propensity to study the Vedas and even become an acharya in her lineage, as some contemporary teachers have? Pujya Swamiji recognized this truth, and his actions and words supported this, as well as Acharya Shunya's grandfather and guru, Baba. There is a global history of undermining the feminine and female voices, historical or otherwise, but this is shifting. This is even why I am here, stating these words to such esteemed listeners. Om. Contemporary female teachers of Advaita Vedānta are carrying forward the unique pedagogy that is offered by the female rishis of time immemorial. Whether instantiated by historical females or not, the stories are true in ways that are beyond empirical facts. This is crucial to understanding the power of the feminine presence in the Vedas and their capacity to inspire females and males in the present and future. The sacred story of Gargi is enlivened in our being as our highest intelligence that discerns supreme truth and transmits it to others in a relational way. A pedagogy of love and friendliness that invites all aspects of our personal life into the classroom of awakening our supreme nature, affirms what Pujya Swamiji also emphasized in his Only God series. Ultimately, what is the distance between all aspects of our being, including our tears, our broken hearts, our full loving hearts, our dismay and judgment, our inspiration and fortitude, our peace, our conflict, and wars? What is the distance between all of these things and consciousness? Pujya Swamiji would say, zero distance. Just as there is zero distance between the clay and the clay pot, and the gold bangle. Thank you, Puja Swamiji, for enlivening a sampradaya of such high caliber, where seekers far and wide have access to genuine, clear knowledge of supreme truth. Thank you. Om.